Thank you. So for those that have just joined us, please go ahead and take a moment and introduce yourselves in the chat room, your name and the chapter that you're associated with. And when you're using the chat in WebEx, make sure that you're sending that message to everyone so that everybody on the call can see who's with us today. Michelle, do you want to share that first slide? Get going. One of the things that we're going to ask for today, as we did on our last new training class directors meeting, is for a volunteer note taker. So if there is anybody on the call that wants to jump in and say that they are willing to take notes, that would be great today. And then as the slide says, we will be sharing the notes, the chat room, and these slides post-meeting. Is there anybody willing to step up and volunteer to take notes for us? All right, Michelle, it's right at 1 o'clock, and I haven't seen anybody in the chat room volunteer. So I'm going to ask it one more time to see if anybody is willing to volunteer to just help us take a few extra notes with the call today. Again, we'll share the slides in the chat room, but having the notes taken is always helpful just to have some more information captured from today's event. If you are willing to volunteer to take notes, please just go ahead and write that in the chat room. Okay, last call for a volunteer note taker.
Let me unmute in case. Oh, Julia Trimble will. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. And so, Julie, if you'll just take those notes and then email them to Michelle or myself afterwards, and we'll get those posted with the slides and the chat. And we are recording today's session as was requested, and so we'll share this recording as well. All right, Michelle, if you're ready to kick this off, let's do it.
Okay. So welcome to our, I think this is the second or third, I can't remember if it's the second or third call that we've had, third call with new class training directors. And we started doing these sessions shortly after like the shutdown and pandemic started, because things were so uncertain at the time, and we were adapting as we were going along and getting new resources and sharing them with you as we went along. And here we are again today. kind of still in the same boat and sharing new information and new ways of doing things and updated guidance. So, as we mentioned earlier today, or as you were coming on, your microphones are muted as you're entered into the meeting room. If you did need to speak up, you can either text chat us in the chat room, or you can mute yourself. If you have slow internet connection, you can turn off your video to keep up with the bandwidth. Many of you have already introduced yourselves in the chat room. If you haven't done so already, please just text chat your name and the chapter you're representing. Mary Pearl will be monitoring the chat room today. Julia Trimble is taking notes for us. Thank you, Julia. The meeting is recorded. We mentioned that. We'll be sharing everything after the meeting. And I lost my controls. Hold on. There it is. Hey. Our agenda today is we have some updates on the return to service guidelines for you. They were updated November 25th, and then we'll explain later in the presentation that we are expecting some type of update probably later today, which we will share with you thereafter. We'll go over basic and advanced training guidelines for 2020, working on at the state level for chapters. We'll look at distance and basic, We'll look at distance and basic and advanced training resources such as statewide application and training news release, regional WebEx accounts, preparing to go virtual trainings, how to share
I think
training
we forgot to
resources.
take that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think we forgot to take that part off from the last meeting.
Yeah. We'll talk about how to handle field sessions during this crazy time, and then volunteer service, opportunities for volunteer service. So I'll hand it over to Mary Pearl for return to service guidelines.
Yeah, of course. So as Michelle and I have joked a few times, if you're looking to get a return to service guidelines change, just go ahead and schedule a master naturalist meeting. And then they send you the the guideline changes the day before the meeting. So we got these. It's a joke, but it's proven true the last couple of times. So we got these guidelines over the holiday break, and that's not them. This is the update that came out that we were following previous to what happened, or the guidelines that just came out. So Michelle, if you'll go to the next slide. The updates that just came out are, again, new to us, and are updated as of November 25th. They account until December 6th. However, we were also told in that same email from AgriLife that they were anticipating another update today at some point, potentially. If they don't send out an update today, there will be an update after December 6th. Are y'all confused yet? Because we're right there with you. So updates are happening weekly at this point. We are trying our best to get these sent out to you as soon as we get them. They've also changed the type of guidelines to county-based guidelines. Ready for some more confusion? Counties have 3 different color coordinated levels of guidance, depending on their factors of positivity and then the rise in cases or identification as a hot spot. So this is what we know as of today, again, with a short notice of this guidance that just came out last week. We're still working through all of this. Our master naturalist guidance, and so for you as new training class directors, fear not, we will be going over this with your presidents next week on our monthly meeting with your presidents as well. But for you as training directors, the best management practice is to err on the side of caution. So depending on if you were a single county or a multi-county chapter, working off of the guidelines for the strictest county in your territory, if you're a multi-county territory, will be policy going forward. So again, we are still working through all of this guidance document. We are sending it out. It is all on our website. And that website is at the bottom right there. And I'm going to type it into chat here in just a second. So that is what we know. This is what we have, and we are trying our hardest to get this stuff out to you guys as quick as it gets updated. Are there any questions that we can answer so far?
I think, and maybe we can go over the levels again. So, and maybe to hear it from another person. Red level counties, and let me, for those of you on the call, maybe I go to the next slide. We'll go to the next slide. Take a look. See if you can identify any of your counties on this slide. And then I'm going to go back. We'll go back and we'll talk about what red level counties mean. I apologize that this slide is ugly. We do not yet, the agency does not yet have this in a map format. That would make it a whole lot easier to digest and kind of take in what we're seeing here. So the counties in red are what you want to particularly pay attention to right now. And that's what we're looking. So definitely all these on the left, my left, are Bexar, Collin through Tarrant, our big urban areas. These are the red counties. And then take a look at the other red counties throughout this list. I'll just give you a minute to maybe find your county.
And if your county is not on there, also, if your county is not on there, for example, Fort Bend County is not on either of these lists, that tells me that that county is a green county because they are not on these lists.
And this is as of the 25th. So these counties could be updating today. And I guess, Mary Pearl, is that the best information you have, is that this will be updated weekly?
Yeah, it sounds like every Monday we're going to get an updated county by county dashboard list, and then we'll post, as soon as I get it, I'll post it to our state website. So that's where I would go to see what the most updated guidance is.
And I see a question in the chat. So those of you who have a red county in your chapter's area, we're going to have to take the policy that the red county dictates what happens for your chapter, because we can't have people traveling to red counties. I'm going to go back
or traveling to green counties. So say your chapter is a 3-county chapter, and one of your counties is red and one of your counties is green. You can't say, okay, let's all go meet over in the green county for this month's meeting, because then you're potentially bringing people from a red county into a green county. We're asking more for your patience than anything else as we're all interpreting this together.
So, Michelle, are you saying that
go ahead.
They control in between the same color?
Let's go back and talk about what being a red county means. So I'm showing you the counties here. And Mary Pearl, just for clarification, the orange, what were they?
I think that means yellow.
Okay, because there was red, orange, and then definite yellow. So let's go back and look at red level counties. There should be no face-to-face extension sponsored events, and Master Naturalist Program is a extension sponsored event, in addition to it being a Texas Parks and Wildlife sponsored event or program or project. No face-to-face or events of any kind in the red counties. No guests speaking or presenting at other entities' events. No overnight events. And then this item probably pertains mostly to staff, but is a great recommendation for our volunteers as well. No travel in those counties. And then essential training related to continuing education. So that's a staff item right there. So I forgot to note that when I copied this in. A yellow level county, and we think at this time that these orange areas also mean yellow.
It says that.
Okay.
It says
So-
yellow/orange.
Okay. Yellow and orange on this slide are the same, so I'll give you a chance to digest the list there, and then we'll go back and talk about what yellow-orange means.
And again, this full list is linked on our website, so you can pull that up directly from the website.
Okay, a yellow or orange level county. That means group meetings with are permitted with a limit of 10 people, and that might need to get some more clarification on this. Group meetings with a limit of 10 people at 75% capacity of space or less is allowed only if social distancing can be practiced. And one thing we forgot to mention again before kind of launching into this, face coverings are required at all events statewide. No overnight events. We are in yellow and orange counties. We are to seek alternative methods to deliver face-to-face meetings and educational programs. And then the essential is that essential line is mainly related to employees. Then all the rest of the counties that aren't listed on this list here would be called green counties. Group meetings are permitted with a limit of 50 people, a top limit of 50 people or 75% capacity or less are allowed only if social distancing can be practiced. If greater than 50 attendees, a preparedness plan must be submitted and approval by a supervisor. So you would likely work with your local county extension agent or sponsor to your chapter to develop a preparedness plan if that is something needed for your chapter. Again, the one thing we mentioned is your chapters, that we have some chapters that have as many as 25 counties in them, like in our Panhandle chapter. So if there is one red county within your chapter's area, you will need to follow the red level guidance. And then what does this mean to chapters right now? All of this and this ever changing may affect how you move forward with your training and spring training if you are planning something, or if you're, regardless of whether you're planning face-to-face or some type of scenario for face-to-face, or if you're thinking about going virtual. This new guidance and updated guidance on a continual basis may affect how you move forward.
And two questions that have come up in chat, Michelle, one of the questions is, does it matter if the meeting is inside or outside? Guidance that we've been told from A&M AgriLife is that capacity numbers, so that group meeting of 10 people or group meeting of 50 people, those capacity numbers apply to both indoor and outdoor events. And obviously at red level, there are no events indoors or outdoors at all. So that's the policy there, is that these capacity limits are for both indoor and outdoor. One of the other questions is volunteer service. What is the policy for volunteer service? Volunteer service in this case is the same as a meeting as defined by this, by AgriLife, or as an event. So volunteer service equals group meetings, and the verbiage under group meetings. I also linked in the chat the Excel document list that we were given to go through this, so that maybe you can use the find function to find your county easier, or counties. And again, we anticipate this changing weekly for now, and we'll pass that on as soon as we have it to all of you guys. And really, really, really want to stress and appreciate your patience, as this stuff is new for us, and we're trying to get it out there to you guys as quick as possible.
All right. So we moved on. I think my presentation is timed showing, and so it's moving forward on us. And maybe it's telling us that we do need to move forward. So we have, before we received this guidance, at the state level, we talked about some guidelines, temporary guidelines for the program that specifically pertain to basic training for 2021, anticipating that we would be in some type of scenario with COVID-19 and coronavirus impacts in the new year. And so one of the things that we did is for a temporary 2021 calendar year, keeps going forward on me, which would be January 1st through December 31st, 2021.
Do you want to exit? Michelle, do you want to exit and turn that off? Because
Yeah.
otherwise that's going to make this meeting difficult for the next hour.
It will. And here, you might point me to it real quick.
So you're going to go to animations. I think it's under animations. Nope, it's under transitions. And do on the far right, advanced slide on mouse click, not after.
Okay. Save that.
That might have been a holdover from my last presentation with this template. My apologies.
Okay. Well, I'll show. Okay, so back to the temporary guidelines that we had set up for 2021, anticipating we would be in some scenario similar to this for the spring, like late winter and spring training classes, and maybe even into 2021. Who knows? So the time frame is the 2021 calendar year. It affects all basic training classes occurring within the calendar year. The class would be an individual training session or series offered as part of the basic training course or series. The temporary policy, as it sits now, is that we will allow for pre-recorded basic training sessions with the required follow-up live Q&A with or by the same speakers. We will allow for all 40 of your planned basic training, or really all of your basic training that you're offering, whether it's 40 hours or more, could be counted could be delivered in this manner, scheduled and delivered in this manner. We want to encourage this to be used minimally or only as needed. And then also the other thing we want to encourage is regional or partnering up with neighboring chapters on your basic training one of the things we've been hearing about from some of the trainers is that they're getting tapped by all of our chapters statewide to deliver some type of training. And I'm going to use some of my staff, Craig Hensley and Tanya Hamayun, as an example, who teach, they are popular trainers for the citizen science training. There are opportunities for chapters that are in a specific ecoregion to get together and collaborate on when they would offer this, such like an example like the citizen science training to their trainees, and maybe have one big training night amongst, let's say, the 3 or 4 or 5 chapters or that are in that ecoregion. And that way you could have Craig and Tanya do the training, have them live, and kind of get maximum bang out of one presentation from them. If you're not using a pre-recorded sample of the trainings. If you wanted to do a live training, that's where we would really encourage the regional and neighboring chapters to get together.
And live virtual training.
Yeah. Sorry. Anything else you wanted to add to this piece, Mary Pearl?
Yeah, and so the nexus of this is, again, as Michelle mentioned, is that our trainers, your presenters, are getting tapped more and more, which is a great thing. It means that the demand is out there, but it's also harder for them to travel and for them to provide all of these virtual presentations. So we're trying to find a way with this policy to optimize their time and your trainees' training experience. Because we do not want to go to a fully recorded basic training learned by YouTube training model that just does not provide the best educational atmosphere for our master naturalists. No. And so the idea here is to have, if they're able to pre-record part of their basic training for, say, 2 to 3 hours of that meat of the material, and then follow up with a 30-minute, hour, however long it would take, live Q&A Zoom meeting or virtual meeting to answer questions. That allows for your trainees, your students, to have that best practices for interaction with the speaker and make sure that those concepts are understood.
And then Mary Pearl, we might, as you were talking, I was looking at some of the questions in the text chat. So there's one question in there that asks about, should a red level county immediately stop all volunteer activity? And I think, can we work with Extension to maybe get some more clarification on that piece?
Yeah, I was going to ask that one and Bob's.
Certainly it should stop all face-to-face training and education. But what about socially distanced volunteer service?
I think it stops all in-person volunteer service done by groups. I think it does. I'll need to check. These are great questions, y'all. Again, this is stuff that we're trying to understand alongside you guys. So your questions are helping us to pose the right questions to our leadership to make sure that we're understanding it in the best way possible. So I was going to ask that question and Bob's question as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll capture both of those and send those up the chain.
I'm sure we'll have more too. Okay, so are there any other questions on this piece of the temporary basic training policy? To recap, we are allowing pre-recorded sessions to sub in for basic training sessions in this time period. We are allowing for all at least 40 hours of your training to be handled in that manner. We encourage the pre-recorded pre-recorded option to be used minimally or as needed, depending on the situation. And then within this temporary policy, we're also encouraging chapters to work together regionally, collaborate regionally, or within your ecoregion to offer live trainings by the same speaker where possible. So moving on to the additional temporary basic training guidelines, some options to consider within your training or for your training, things that we haven't had a ruling on, or we don't have a change in policy yet, or I don't know how today's guidance really affects this or not, but field sessions. Um, whoops, dang it, still doing that. Um, and you can jump in here, Mary Pearl, where you.
Yeah, I'll take on this one. And I think I don't know if you applied it to all, so you may have to exit again and apply it to all, guys. Sorry about this. So we started talking about things that we can do to help our chapters as they're doing their basic trainings and new and different arenas. And so we've talked about the pre-recorded sessions, and we've talked about wanting to continue to have live interaction with speakers to ensure that content is absorbed and understood. And that's why that live Q&A policy stands firm. But one of the things that we started to think about is how do we make field sessions happen and that hands-on interaction with material happen under all of these very intense and very localized guidance for different chapters. So each of these bullets here are suggestions. These are options to consider. We encourage you to capture these ideas and then discuss them with your chapter leadership, and then also discuss them with your trainees to see if they're comfortable with these types of ideas of ways to engage in field sessions as they're entering into the chapter. So here are some of our ideas, and I want to encourage you guys to share your ideas with us as you are literally on the front lines of this and planning your basic training field sessions with all of these changing guidances. So some of the ideas that we have come up with, our options to consider, is for field sessions to be held as small group meetups where possible, with all of the health and safety standards, physical distancing, and audience comfort. So if you always go to the nature center around the corner to do your botany class, maybe you have smaller groups meet and rotate throughout the day. So a small group meets at 9 o'clock, next group meets at 10 o'clock, and so on. And by small, thanks Julia for asking what small means. By small, that follows the capacity guidelines that dictate for your area. So if you're in one of the areas that is a capacity of 10, then that's what small means at that point. And small would not work for red counties. So for red counties, maybe consider individual at-home hands-on field sessions where you set up a science at home activity for your trainees to follow. For example, I'll continue to use the idea of the botany, the plants unit. So for the plants unit, you would encourage your new trainees to do a mini field session in their backyard or at a local outdoor space if available. And so they individually engage with a field session. We would want you to have some sort of time limits set for that. So I'm not out in my garden playing around for the next 6 hours, getting basic training hours. You would set a time limit of, okay, let's assume that this basic training field session science at home activity takes 30 minutes. Go and engage in this for 30 minutes outside, or however.
Do this, and this, you will get, this much time for.
Yeah, and one of our chapters is already doing this. The Gideon Lincecum chapter presented on this at the annual meeting, and I know that they have been willing to share their resources previously. So we can share those out again with you guys, and they're located all on our annual meeting webpage as well. That includes that same individual field sessions to local outdoor spaces with all of those guidelines followed as well. Something else to consider, and again, this is why there's some asterisks here and a request for some open discussion is this something that you would require to complete as part of certification for a basic training? What if this person is not able to get outside? What if they're not able to travel to state parks because of their own personal health restrictions? So thinking through all of those different scenarios to still try to engage them in some sort of distance and individualized field session work, while also understanding that there's all these background considerations that we'll have to that you'll have to make for your new trainees. And then the last thing on here before we open it up for discussion is virtual field sessions. We saw this work really well at the annual meeting where 5 of our Houston regional chapters were able to send out a camera into a host site, pre-record their virtual field session, and then host live Q&A with the attendees post-event or after the recording. So that could be part of that, watching a pre-recorded video of the field experience and then having a live Q&A. I have 3 camera kits for loan. I'm happy to send those out, and just contact me and let me know when you'd like them. I'm gonna try to keep them on about 2-week cycles or so. So I would mail them to you and you'd get them for 2 weeks and then you'd mail them back, just so that everybody gets a chance to use those if needed. So with that, are there other options or suggestions for engaging in field sessions?
I'm looking at some of the things in the chat. A few people have mentioned that the backyard field session idea that was presented at the annual meeting is a technique they're looking at using or implementing. Some other examples, a park recording session or live Q&A seems like a good alternative for one of the chapters. Another chapter is considering small, socially distanced field sessions, but that again will be dictated by what the county situation is or counties situations are, the closer it gets to the scheduled training or event.
And maybe one of the biggest takeaways, y'all, I realize that this is a lot to digest and there's a lot of information and options that we're suggesting here. I think the biggest takeaway that I would go home with, as if I were in your shoes as a basic training director trying to plan, is to plan contingencies, to plan additional options, to be flexible with kind of these ever-changing guidelines that are coming down from our leadership, and this ever-changing kind of training scenario that we're seeing play out. And then just asking your trainees for patience, and encouraging them to be flexible with you.
Probably need to move on. We have 136, so let's see. You might have.
This was where we were just going to record some of those thoughts that we just talked through. And we're happy. The little asterisk here is review with the state office. If you have an idea for a basic training field session that you want to run by us, please send us an email, realizing that we're also at some capacity limits and sometimes our email takes 2 to 3 weeks to get back to you guys, but we will try to get back to you if you have questions that you want us to review.
So there's a question in there about, does Facebook Live count, does Facebook count as live discussion?
The Facebook Live events that the Texas Nature Trackers team does.
Okay. I mean, as a chapter, you'd really have to like where that's being done, and in the topic, because of
Yeah,
what may
location.
be happening in Central Texas may not be addressing the training topics and the ecoregion for North Texas, say, or the Panhandle or the Valley. So really, I mean, same scenario with all of our things in any of this is that you need to keep true to teaching about your ecoregion that you're within, and it needs really every opportunity would need to be reviewed. Training opportunity would need to be reviewed to ensure that it is fitting of your chapter's needs, local scenarios, local case studies, local ecoregion. That it's your members are truly getting trained on what is happening or what occurs within your local ecoregion. And it's not to say that the technique that it through which it's being offered, that technique would be through Facebook Live. It may be different for, let's say, a North Texas chapter scenario or chapters in the North Texas area. That person may be Sam as the urban biologist in one of the urban biologists in North Texas area offering a training versus someone from South or Central Texas offering a training from their ecoregion. Something in that scenario or example, something from Sam may be more fitting of the North Texas chapters in that region.
And not to complicate it even further, Michelle, but it would also be really difficult to audit the material before presenting it and counting it as hours, unless it was specifically built and designed and requested in that for it to cover the specific points that you need covered in your basic training course. It'd be hard to say something counts before watching it. And then if you watch it post event, then it's just a recording. So that's a really difficult one to call. It would take a lot of consideration by your chapter leadership.
But I do know, so, and to throw more fly in the ointment, I do know more of our Facebook Live events are being recorded and then archived for viewing later, and even like our programs use later, my program, my staff, their use later. So moving on, regarding basic training goals for 2021, we mentioned some of the things that we're looking at doing. We are investigating a shared calendar or a shared calendar tool for new training class coordinators, so that if you do have things that you want to collaborate on regionally or eco-regionally within your area, we could possibly use this shared calendar resource as a place to do that for your chapters, to look at training schedules easily. This would be something that would be only visible to new class training coordinators, possibly an extension on our website where you would be a password protected page for new class training directors. We've also been talking a lot about Slack, and our program has been using Slack for various groups in various topics already. There is a Slack group set up for new class training coordinators there already. And for the truly new class training coordinators coming on, with all of the elections taking place over this month and next month, we can get you added to Slack. If you'd like to be added to Slack, please let us know. One option is to look at a calendar option there as well. We've talked about a private Facebook group as one possibility. That might be kind of a last resort because not everybody uses Facebook. But Slack and in our website are more widely adopted tools that could be a little easier to manage. So let us know in the chat, like which option would work best for you, or what options are you familiar with already, or do you have new ideas?
There's a little bit of
Who says
discussion
number
in
one?
there. Yeah, there's a little bit of discussion in the chat so far that asking what is Slack. So Slack is a virtual workspace. It is a lot like it's a downloadable program onto your computer, but you can also use it on your phone or on devices or as a standalone website. And it's a shared resource page where a chat can happen, but then also shared documents can cross over. So Slack has a lot of flexibility, but it takes a little bit of learning to get onto Slack to start with.
A little
The
bit, not a lot.
Not a lot. It just depends on your comfort level with something similar to that. There's some discussion in there that they don't like Slack. There's some discussion that it's a great tool. So I've seen that previously where you either really like Slack or you're not a big fan of it. Shared calendar. So again, the idea here is that what we want to do with the shared calendar is not one more thing that you as a new training class director have to do, but it's one more resource that you can have to see what other chapters in your neighboring region or your local ecoregion are sharing and what their schedule looks like. So if you have a last minute speaker change, you can see, oh, hey, look, our neighboring chapter has this topic coming up next week. Maybe we can co-host this with them and make this work for us. So we're just trying to create a calendar, a spot for training class coordinators to go to share resources, share dates, and possibly create some of that collaboration through that shared calendar. So appreciate all of y'all's input in the chat and we'll capture all of that.
Okay. So as if there wasn't enough new stuff coming today, we have another new temporary policy for you. And that is regarding advanced training. So again, this temporary policy timeframe is the new calendar year, January 1 through December 31st, 2021. It applies to all Texas Master Naturalists, not just new trainees going through classes right now. The current policy is what we updated in 2020, in March or April of 2020. We allowed for all 8 hours of advanced training to be able to be obtained through live virtual training sessions online, where there is a live speaker and open chat or Q&A for student presenter interaction. This policy will continue through the 2021 calendar year. That's the current policy for all everyone. The temporary policy for the 2021 calendar year is that we will allow pre-recorded AT sessions with follow-up live Q&A with speakers by the same speaker. And so the difference there is that the AT session itself would be pre-recorded and trainees could watch it. And then the Q&A could be followed up live afterwards or at a set time with speakers or the same speaker that offered the recorded session. Hours for both watching and attending the live Q&A interaction with the speaker will count. What will not be allowed is no fully recorded videos with no speaker interaction. The goal here is to allow for group discussion with speakers that allows for enhanced learning, where Q&A happens in a group setting or an audience with group learning. We have one exception to this rule. Go ahead. You're gonna.
Yeah, so the exception to the rule here is that we have some state office offerings that are coming up. One that has passed and one that is coming. So the annual meeting 2020, as stated policy in our last meeting in August of 2020, when we last met as new training class directors, that those sessions at the annual meeting can be watched as fully recorded sessions and counted as AT hours. That annual meeting will turn off on April 2021. So that's just a specific event there. And then this is the first that y'all have seen this, but we'll talk about it here in just a second. We're going to start a new program in 2021 called TMN Tuesdays. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit, but those are going to be recorded sessions that could be watched for AT hours through the calendar year. That's what CY means, calendar year 2021. And we'll cover that one specifically here in just a second.
I'm going to move
There's
on.
a great question.
Go ahead.
There's a great question that came up in chat. Julia asked, so if you have these pre-recorded AT sessions and the live Q&A sessions, so that's two different watching events, how do you monitor members that attend both? And in that case, my initial reaction to that question would be that you put that onus on the individual member to be able to count those hours. They responsibly need to go to both to make sure that they are understanding that material and truly earning what that word is, advanced training. I don't know if you would, they do sign in. There is a sign-in list generally, as Nancy mentions, or Regina mentions, but there's got to be a certain amount of
so much of our stuff is on an honor system already.
Exactly.
I mean, we're all adults, and our hope is that we continue acting like adults and be honorable and truthful with what we're recording and what you're accomplishing.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Volunteer service guidelines. The volunteer service requirements at this time are not changing for 2021. One of the things that really we want to kind of point you to is this in for we have a for those of you who aren't familiar with the project fair competition each year at the annual meeting. All of our chapters have an opportunity to compete for a project grant through the project fair. One of the questions we asked everyone who submitted a project fair entry this year to address was how their chapter was adapting, or how that project was adapting through COVID-19. And if you want to be inspired, if you want some feel-good Mondays, go ahead and look at these chapter project fair entries, because the chapters that presented their entries, you'll be blown away by just the passion and ingenuity of how our chapters are adapting in this time. And there's some great ideas there. There are, I'm sure watching those will give you even more ideas and kind of give you a launching point for some additional ideas of how your projects can adapt during these difficult times. So what other ways are your chapters adapting your volunteer service opportunities during this time? So go ahead and chat, in text chat us, or you can come off mic and let us know.
And one of the things that we'll talk about here in just a second, I realize that Michelle's slides keep jumping forward, but
I did that.
Okay. Well, we have seen a success with our virtual volunteer fair in September. We are going to be talking about the next offering of the virtual volunteer fair here in just a second. So Yeah, I mean, and we can jump ahead and talk about that. So we are going to host another virtual volunteer fair as a way to share ideas and resources for engaging in virtual volunteer service, realizing that every chapter now has these different colored counties to consider for engaging in activities. Um, so we just launched our second virtual volunteer fair. It will be held February 3rd and 4th. We're anticipating 2 days worth of sessions due to the popularity of the first event. We just opened that call for proposals. We will end it or close that call for proposals December 15th. So if you have, and the other part that makes this second virtual volunteer fair unique is that the first one we really kept internal to both Parks and Wildlife and AgriLife Extension, sharing their projects. This one we're opening up for all of our conservation partners. So if there is a conservation partner in your area that you think could use some virtual volunteer help that is statewide applicable, we can please share the call for proposals with them so that we can get that out there.
I want to mention just from hearing from some of the project coordinators from our last virtual volunteer fair in September is that this volunteer fair, virtual volunteer fair, kind of gave a stage for projects to be highlighted in a new light. And not only did it present the project and kind of brought it to the forefront for several other master naturalists to be a part of, but it highlighted the virtual pieces of the project, and it brought these. I mean, I think it brought so many volunteers to some of these projects or new projects that it like there were some projects that needed 20 volunteers and got 100 or more. So there's a little bit of competition there, but I think the important thing is that this is an opportunity for our conservation partners to kind of refresh their project, bring it into a new light, and get some really good additional volunteers on working on it. If they can kind of reimagine it and think about how it could be done virtually.
Or just our own chapters seeing volunteer activities, needs for volunteers at different locations. For example, some of the state park presentations from September, their need for volunteers may have been very specific to their park, but I heard from chapters that came away from that and said, oh, well, I just went and asked my local state park if they need the same type of volunteer service. So that's another idea, is that these types of projects can stem off of these great ideas that are presented for needs at the event as well. So our biggest request by sharing this information with you as basic training directors is you guys are familiar with your partners in the area, your trainers, your presenters. Please share that call for proposals with them so that they can submit their ideas for projects to be presented next February.
Okay, now I'm going to go back to TMN Tuesdays. Do you want to cover that one too?
Yeah, I don't mind. So TMN Tuesdays is a new idea for us. One of the things that Michelle and I want to do to provide, and we talked about this last month with your chapter presidents. One of the things that Michelle and I want to provide in 2021 is a way to engage in statewide virtual advanced training, covering topics that are relevant, ideas that are collaborative across the state, and things that inspire our volunteers to service, inspire our volunteers to stay and get involved. And so we're going to have these once a month. They'll be the second Tuesday of the month, and all of the dates are there. They are all on our website, of course. And we're going to host a guest speaker or speakers, a group of speakers, maybe a panel of speakers, to talk about a specific idea. Y'all, I think y'all are the first to hear this. We did get confirmation that Doug Tallamy is going to be our speaker on February 9th. I just got that a few weeks ago. So he will be speaking live on February 9th. These are going to be held during the lunch hour, 12 to 1 p.m. Central Time. They will be recorded and shared, and these can count for advanced training, either watched live or as recordings, as this is one of those exceptions to the new policy. And so this is our chance to focus on these topic areas of high need, or of special interest to master naturalists across the state. We have a list of ideas here. Highlighting chapter projects could be a great presentation. TMN Tuesday, where we have a roundtable of some great project innovations, having a diversity, equity, and inclusion discussion or panel presentation on junior master naturalists, focusing on how different boards manage their leadership retreats, or even just a new training class ideas panel discussion would be a great presentation. So it doesn't necessarily need to be individual speakers or kind of keynote level speaker ideas. It could be discussion hours as well. So we'd really love to hear from you guys some other ideas. So if you've got ideas of things that you want to hear, or individual speakers that you want the state to look into, please drop those in the chat. And we're going to have more on this. One of the other things that I'm working to do, this is what you get into when you get new projects, is we're going to have a drop and go template for you to share in your chapter newsletter or on your social media about these to advertise this. So this should be something that hopefully is easy to plug and play for chapters and share with their members.
Okay, another resource I think that we've already shared with you in the past, but just to reiterate, the regional WebEx accounts that we have for chapter business and chapter training. Those are all available. We hosted training on the use of the regional WebEx accounts through the summer and a little bit into the fall. We had to pause that while we were working on the annual meeting. But if your chapter has not received the regional WebEx account training yet, the training to be able to use the accounts, please contact me. We in some of this stuff in the next 3 or 4 bullets will make more sense after that. Again, the capacity on the WebEx meetings is that you can hold up to 2,000 participants on those accounts. There's no time limit for the trainings. You can have an all-day meeting, 24 hours long, or however long you need it. We do have, let's see, 6 accounts right now. And you can see the region map here on the right of how chapters are organized to use those accounts. We did see, I'm going to tell you now, we did have some heavy use on some of the accounts where, let's say, I think it was chapter or region 5 and region 6. One of those regions had heavy use on the account, and chapters ended up accidentally scheduling on top of each other the same times their trainings. So a couple chapters I had to move to another region account because those accounts were not being used as much or hardly at all. And so I'll cover in the next slide just some notes about when you do use the regional accounts for your chapter training. Just to remember that these regional accounts are being used by several chapters within your region, that the WebEx account name in the picture should not change or should not be personalized. We ask that you always check the calendar, the meeting calendar within these WebEx accounts before you set a new meeting, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Trainings on how to use the WebEx account can be, if your chapter hasn't received training on how to use the WebEx accounts, let me know. And these are relatively new tools and resources for us. So again, thank you for your patience as we've been launching into the WebEx world. I mentioned checking the calendar. One of the things that is imperative with using these accounts is that before you set up a meeting, to go in and check the calendar. So when you first log into a WebEx account, you'll kind of get to this landing page here on the left. You'll go over to this meetings where it says meetings, looks like a little calendar, and then meetings, you'll click on that. This next page over here on the right will open up. And the thing you want to look at is as far out as you can. So this one I was looking at, it kind of takes you to the snapshot of the first 7 days that are in there. Well, you can take it to look out to the next 30 days, the next month, or the following month after that, or a custom range. And I think it'll allow you to look out as far as 3 months. And for many chapters, you do need to do this. WebEx doesn't tell you when you've scheduled over top of another person's meeting. And it could cause some serious issues with if you are overlapped completely with another chapter's training or meeting. One of you will get kicked off. It does allow for meetings to overlap by like 10 or 15 minutes with no problems. That is okay. And the company has said that that's okay, but to overlap completely with another chapter, somebody will get kicked off. So please don't do that. Please look at the calendar when using these accounts. And then if you have trouble, if there is a chapter that has a training that is holding a training already at the same time that you want to, or they're holding a meeting at the same time you want or need to hold your meeting, just let me know. Myself or Mary Pearl know, and we can get you set up with an alternate tool or alternate account for that particular session.
And one of the questions in the chat is it all right for a chapter to continue to use their own chapter purchased video conferencing tool? That's fine. These are just offered resources for those chapters who do not have the ability to or have not purchased their own.
Yep.
So on this last slide here, or second to last slide, I believe, we have sent out the request for training information. I think I've gotten 6 or 8, and I was not able to get it updated like I wanted to this morning. But I think I have 6 or 8 chapters who have responded so far with your basic training class information so that we can share this on our website. That's another great way for other training class directors to know which chapters in their area are offering training soon. And then we will do another one of these calls. Michelle and I are going to try to do 2 new training class directors calls per year moving forward. A biennial call sounds about right to connect with each other. At least 2 a year, pending.
Knowing that things like today or the recent guidance we just received may necessitate a call earlier than that.
Yeah, and we're also continuing our monthly calls with your chapter presidents as well. That'll continue throughout the 2021 year at minimum. But we're looking for a date in June of 2021 to host our next meetup with you guys. So that will be on your radar. So keep that on your radar as you're either continuing as a new training class director or if your chapter is bringing on a new training class director next year. Okay, and then last but not least, what's next? With the updates from today, knowing that we threw a lot of information at you guys and a lot of changes, knowing that all of this stuff will be shared afterwards, I promise. I really would like to see a few of you guys unmute and help us to talk about what may change with your training schedule or what your basic training class is going to look like. I saw some great discussion about changing in class capacities in the chat. So if you guys want to talk about why and what the nexus was for that decision so that other chapters can hear that, I'll pause there and see if we can open it up for a little discussion now. And you should be able to unmute yourself either at the bottom of your screen with the mute button or in the participant list. You should be able to click on the unmute.
Hi, Mary Pearl and Michelle and everyone else. This is Julia. It was sort of a blessing in disguise for our last, we didn't have a fall session. We decided we didn't want to try to do complete virtual. Of course, now we have to. But in our spring session, we had to end up with the final part of it being virtual. And it was actually a blessing in disguise because it let us figure out how to do that. So now we're comfortable going into next spring session going virtual. Our big concern was the field sessions. We really wanted to try to do that. And we specifically, our class size is about the same, but we didn't make it bigger. I mean, you could make it bigger virtually, right? But we wanted to keep it small so that if we did field sessions, it wouldn't be a problem. We even considered trying to break them up into two, because we were going to have 20 or so people, break them up into two groups. And, we were considering all kinds of things. And now, since we're in Harris County, I'm actually thinking that may not even happen that way. But that was the big change for us, was trying to figure out the field sessions. They're so important, and they're honestly a big favorite with all of the trainees. It's always a big deal for them, the field sessions. And it's still not, obviously, if they're not starting until March or April, it's possible that things could change, but I'm thinking it's probably not going to, with Harris County being just what it is with so many people here. So that was our big change, was field sessions. And obviously it's still not worked out yet, but this helps a lot. It gives us some food for thought and being able to maybe make some new changes. So thanks so much.
Yeah, and Julia, I think I appreciate your willingness to call one option plan A and one option plan B, and making arrangements for both so that you're prepared with whatever you need to move forward with as you get closer to actually implementing your field sessions. I think we all just have to kind of prepare for the unknown in these times.
This is Nancy Wilson from North Texas chapter, and we, are doing all online classes this year, and we discovered that our applicant base is from a much broader geographic area than when people had to drive to class. I think that limited some people wanting to fight Dallas traffic. So that's going to be an interesting challenge for us to have students spread out over such a far area and try to onboard them into the chapter. I'm looking forward to it because I think it will encourage our chapter to look for volunteer opportunities that are farther afield to engage our students in. But that was kind of an interesting thing that happened. We limited.
That's really neat how that kind of facilitated where in that pro con list of your training going virtual, that pro is that your trainees are coming from different parts of your territory than they normally would have.
Yeah, we were excited to see that, particularly we encompass Kaufman County, and we've had very few participants from Kaufman County, but this year that was opened up to them. So I guess we'll be looking for ways to drive out to Kaufman County to have field trips or something to kind of include them more. But one thing
everybody might need to be mindful of is still your chapter's area. Yes, you may be getting more people from the fringes of your area, but your chapter still has a chapter area to think about as well in applicants from that area.
Yeah, well, we limited our class size to half our normal size, because we were concerned about being able to engage people online and make enough of a connection without having the face-to-face. So we thought a smaller class would make it easier to connect with people. But we are now up to 60 applicants for 30 slots. So we're going to be facing some really sad declines for entry.
Hi, this is Ann, and I'm with the South Texas Border Chapter, and we're working with the Rio Grande Valley Chapter, and we're going to hold our classes together. And we already have them all planned out with our speakers. They'll all be virtual, and I've got a meeting tomorrow. All our field trips, we've got 10 field trips. We're each doing 5. Each chapter is planning 5, and we've gone out to state parks and nature parks, and we're having the rangers or the naturalists there do a 45 minutes field trip, recorded or live, and then 15 minutes of question and answer, so that we have 10 field trips all together. And we're limiting our class to the number of books. So we got them last year at the annual meeting. We pick them up so they don't have to be shipped. So I had 26 books, so I can have 26 in our class. And we're going to have breakout sessions so that we can get to know the people that are going to be in our chapter. So we've got fun activities we're going to do with each meeting each week. And we start in January, the first Thursday in January, and we go to the end of March. So.
Yeah, I thought y'all's adaptability by bringing your 2 chapters training events back together was a really innovative way of kind of sharing some of that. And Michelle did just drop, you do have the ability to purchase curriculum from a distance. Shipping can get expensive, but if you need more books, you can get more books through online service too. Are there other chapters that have things that they are doing to adapt their training, their basic training classes to some of these new requirements or new changes?
Mary Pearl, this is Regina Dale from Elm Fork Chapter.
Hi, Regina.
Hi. We did all of our training this fall on Zoom. We provided 45 hours of 9 class sessions, and we did 3 optional field trips. Those were done in small groups. We had co-hosts, co-chairs last year, so one of us took one group and one took another. We did limit our class. We did graduate 16 individuals, and as of now, 6 of those are already initially certified. So they were able to also find the service time. We found all of our speakers to be very understanding about going on Zoom. We had Thursday night practice sessions with the speakers every week. In some cases, if they were new to it, we did 2 and 3 sessions with them if they wanted to. But we had very few problems with our Zoom classes. We did require all of the students to stay on video. They were required to have video and to stay on video the entire time. Most of our class days were 5 hours long. Of course, we had lunch break and a morning break and afternoon break, but it went really great. We adopted a mascot for this class, which was the Zoom bee. And so we had a mascot, and we have a class song that was produced by one of our trainees. So we think the virtual class sessions can work for us again this year, but of course we don't have our class again until fall, but we are considering that. So we are planning 2 different trainings, whether it's in person or virtual. But it worked well for us. So we feel confident we'll be okay again this year. We are limiting our class to 24 to start out with. If we find out as we go through the year that we need to cut that back a little bit before we close the application process, we may do so, just so we can see everyone on the screen at one time.
And Regina, will you say again, how did you manage field sessions in the fall?
I'm sorry, say that again. I didn't hear you.
How did you manage your field sessions for your basic training class? you
Okay.
offer?
Because our chapter normally provides 72 hours of training and we require 60 to graduate, we ask our board to allow us to go down to just the 40 hours required by the state. So it made it easier for us, and we did provide 45 hours of class time. Our field trips, we rotated. We have 3 places we go for our field trips, and Elise took a group one week, and I went to a different place that same week with my half of the class. And then the middle class, we had a problem with scheduling with Ray Roberts. So we did what you were talking about. We staggered our arrival times and our departure times so that we were not there at the same time with our groups. And then the last one, we just flipped what we did the first week. So they only got 2 to 3 hours at these places instead of the 5 or 6 they normally in a normal year they would get. But it still gave them the opportunity to see the 3 places we want them to see every year. So we still were able to pull that off, but it worked fine. And they were optional, by the way, in case I didn't say that. The field trips were optional, and like I said, they did not count as a part of their training hours.
That's great. Good.
Okay.
That gives your trainees the flexibility, depending on their personal health status, to make that decision.
Correct. And we did have a situation with one trainee the last field trip day because someone in her household had been exposed, so she had to opt out. So we did have that situation, but everyone distanced and masked the whole time. So we were in good shape, and I did a video for each field trip with, slideshow videos so that we did have some photos, and we shared them on our chapter Facebook page so that the chapter could still feel involved each week with what was going on, if we were having, because we have not had any in-person chapter meetings since January. So it was a way to use social media, use other ways to keep the chapter involved with the trainees and the trainees involved with the chapter.
That's great. And so one of the other things that I wanted to ask from some of the other chapters on the call too is to me, the heart and soul of the Master Naturalist program is the network that our members create, that family feeling. And I'd love to hear maybe through your new training class or through even just your chapter meetings, ways that you guys have gone virtual but kept that in-person interaction and kept that in-person engagement to get to know your trainees, to get to have some of that social interaction that encourages them to maintain their membership in the chapter and kind of build that family or that tribe.
Mary Pearl, could I just, before we move past that, could I ask one question? We also, the Gulf Coast chapter also requires a lot more than 40 hours. So I don't think it'll be a problem. But if we did have to forego field sessions, I worried, about how many hours it would drop. Is the 40 minimum is still required, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, so the number of hour requirements is not changing for any of the 3 categories. The method in which you obtain those has changed for advanced training and basic training hours. So we're still at 48 and 40, but the method in which you can earn your basic training and the method in which you do engage in advanced training has changed.
Thank you.
Temporarily. Mm-hmm. So we're at the end of the meeting now. If you have other obligations and you need to go, but I would still like to pose that question that I asked earlier on ways that you have found to keep your new trainees engaged and get to know them socially or individually to open up that kind of network and that Master Naturalist family that is really at the heart of what our program is about.
So this is Bob Cunningham with Midcoast chapter. We were lucky in that our class started last February, so we at least got 3 real sessions in before everything shut down for COVID. We waited till the fall to resurrect the program again after seeing so many of our venues domino on us, and then looked for some substitute ones. It's a real challenge for us in particular. We're 8 counties spread across the whole coastal bend and inland. So we're drawing from a large but relatively sparsely populated area. And our training program is the standard program is 10 sessions in 10 different venues with all day Saturday field sessions. So it really threw a monkey wrench in how we normally do our training. We ended up in the fall by taking presentations or some substitute of those presentations and working those as virtual sessions, usually on Friday night or Saturday morning, and then transitioning to a field venue later in the morning or early afternoon and breaking the class into 2 or 3 groups with different presenters rotating through the different subjects that we would ordinarily handle. And that allowed at least some element of people to see each other and interact, a kind of random grouping of people as they were going through. And in these different field sessions, I think we had 4 of them, and we're doing our last one this coming Saturday. Our real problem is going to be those in the future, those venues. Many of the ones we rely on remain closed. A lot of the presenters remain unable to get leave from their agency entities to do presentations with people other than virtual. And this whole Red County thing is really going to throw a monkey wrench in. Our training program with 10 sessions has 1 session in Victoria County. All of our counties are green except Victoria. I have no trainees from Victoria, no presenters from Victoria, and I can live without the 1 session we do in Victoria. But under the kind of restrictions that you're talking about, we wouldn't be able to do any field session. And that really does lay havoc to how we have done our training in the past and how we managed to pull it back together in the fall with some satisfactory result. I think all the people who managed to get through who stuck with us through the training program are slated to graduate with their 40 hours once we get through this last session on Saturday.
Yeah, and so these restrictions, this guidance that we're getting about the individual counties, I do have your question that I will be posing to our leadership, but this is something that is coming down from AgriLife Extension through the university system, and while it is sometimes difficult to swallow, it's for the best safety for everybody.
I would
And so
to be liable for anything.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I do have to
exactly.
comment. I do have to comment though that when this all started, and we were looking at those AgriLife rules and trying to fit them into what that meant for our training programs, it looked pretty clear that they have their own functions in mind and how they operate as an extension service, and they aren't really thinking specifically about the kinds of things that we're doing as a training program or out in the TMN world. Having something that is tailored a little more closely to what we're doing and staying safe for what we do would be kind of helpful.
Yeah, but do understand that AgriLife Extension is spread across all 254 counties, has thousands of different program types and engagements and meetings
Almost a million volunteers.
Service.
Yeah.
So it's difficult for them to customize
you're making my
policy.
point. You're making my point for me. That's exactly what the issue is.
Yeah. There's some great comments in the chat, getting back to the kind of core question that I asked about keeping your new training class members engaged socially so that you're continuing to build that network and that family feeling that is really, again, at that core of the Master Naturalist program. Nancy from the North Texas chapter mentioned that they've done tailgates. And I've seen this done by a couple of different chapters where you are able to, again, following local guidelines, set up in a park and invite folks to distance outdoors, masked, and all of that, to have a pickup spot or a drop off spot to pick up pins or shirts or items such as that that are pre-packaged and ready for them to pick up, almost like a curbside, a Master Naturalist curbside order that you pick up.
Mary Pearl, you bring up a good point. This isn't for your question, but it just made me think. We're planning on having a book pickup, basically a materials pickup. And we're a red county. Is that going to be acceptable? It's going to be a drive-through thing, but so it's not really a meeting, but we're planning on a book pickup. We're going to use the virtual nature bags, and I mean, everything's just going to be, hi, nice to meet you, with a face mask on and all of that. But is that going to be acceptable with the current conditions?
That's a good question, Julia.
Can you add that to your questions?
I'm going to add that to my questions.
Interpret a little bit of that. I mean, you're talking about a drive-through, right?
It's a curbside order.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's not face to face.
It's not a meeting. It's not an event. Yeah.
Okay.
You're not.
And I've brought up.
I'm still going to add it to my list of questions, but my knee jerk is that I don't see issues with that. That's the same as going to the grocery store, as long as there's no direct contact.
This is Mary Jane with Llano Estacado chapter, and I just want to add on to that. We were planning and is exactly what we're going to do, is have a drive-by. We were going to have a birding session with it, but with these new guidelines in place, I think we will cancel that. And I guess I'm correct in assuming that we should cancel that, since that would be a group. But yeah, everyone come by, get their pin, and it's just a drive-through or a tailgate. So that's what we've been reduced to doing this time. Yeah.
And something that I think you're correct, Mary Jane, and something that we're remiss in doing. So these guidelines, this red, yellow, green county stuff that came out over the holiday break, Michelle and I reviewed it this morning for the first time together. We have not sent it out to your chapter presidents yet. It's on my to-do list to send out to them as well. So we're anticipating more questions. Your guys are hearing it first, since we had this
we're
meeting scheduled.
anticipating updates today.
Exactly. I haven't checked my email in the last hour and a half, but there was a potential that they were going to have even more updates out today.
So that raises a good question of how we keep track of this. If in my situation with Midcoast, if Victoria County goes off the red list, that completely changes what we can and can't do with our training program. That's a sliding deal based on particular kinds of qualifications to become a red county. How do I keep track of that?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Bob, and something that I need to make sure we highlight in that email that we send out to the presidents, Michelle, if you'll help me remember that. But as soon as I get the guidance from our AgriLife Extension leadership, I am putting it on our website. So that website link that Michelle dropped into the chat earlier, that is your go-to spot to see what the most updated information is. That is the only way that I know how to get that stuff out to you as fast as possible and as updated as possible, with as many different folks, levels of your leadership that need to know. Having that website maintained is my go-to.
And then the other thing that we are asking about is if the red, yellow, green counties can be put in a map form, because it would be a whole lot easier to take in and see and orient yourself to where you're at and what counties are in proximity. And once the agency produces that, I think it might be easier for us to pull into a Google map of sort and align chapter region, your chapter area to that as well. But again, that's a map the agency doesn't have yet. I think, as we've mentioned before, this is adaptive management, that this stuff is changing hourly, daily, if not even more faster than that. And so we're trying our best to get the information that we have to you in the quickest manner with the resources that we have available to us.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever tried to, I mean, it's not the same as in person, but has anybody ever tried to get to know you WebEx meeting where,
Like a social
like what
Zoom?
we're doing right now, with just an open discussion, right? A social thing. Has anybody tried that? I have no idea if it would work, but it seems like it's better than zero.
We have a weekly family Zoom that I get to Zoom with all my family members that I don't get to see in person. And that's kind of social. You have one kind of lead person that leads the conversation and helps to keep it going. But that's worked at least for my family. I don't know how it would work for your training
I
members.
know some chapters have used Zoom meetings for their membership meetings, and of course, with any meeting like that you're going to have for your membership, there's going to be an element of a get to know you or how you're doing piece to any meeting like that. And if you're not already, I'd encourage it.
Yeah, there's a great suggestion in the chat from Regina Dale. They did a show and tell during their last 2 classes to help to get to know the trainees better. So like a bring something to the Zoom.
There's some great resources out there right now for kind of team building, group building over Zoom and virtual learning. If you just Google some things, there's some great ideas out there right now, like a scavenger hunt, or find something in your house in your home that means something to you, or means, connects you to the outdoors.
And so those social hours are not necessarily training hours because they're not training hours because they're not discussing unit material, but they are important for that kind of core value of getting to know the program and maintaining these members and keeping them engaged.
So I have to say that I may have overlooked this, but
in the chat, y'all.
Are these new guidelines in effect right now?
Yes, through December 6th. What you see today is in effect through December 6th right now.
So then the training I have scheduled to close out my program this Saturday, the 5th, cannot go forward as a field session.
Currently, yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Not your fault, but
no, Bob. And as soon as I have the answer to your question about, as soon as I have the answer to your question that you posed earlier, and as soon as I have additional guidelines, I will update you guys immediately. Again, Michelle and I are trying to get this stuff out to you guys as well as clarify all of these different points that are being asked.
Thank you.
And I also need to point out, we promised an hour meeting for you. We're now 36 minutes past that time. But we want to be able to help get the questions answered that you still have. So with that, what additional questions do you still have?
Well, thank you for this last question. There's some great suggestions coming up in the chat box. It really does help. So thank you, because we've been very concerned about this being all virtual this time. So thank you so much, everybody.
And we'll capture the chat and share it post-event so y'all can read through it again if you need to. Any other questions?
This is Betsy with the Gideon Lincecum chapter. I do have one thing that we're going to do this time around. Last year we did got partway through our class and had to go virtual. We're going to try. Our counties, knock on wood, are in the green, kind of yellow, so we may be able to do field trips. But we have a number of chapter members existing that are going to be buddies of our trainees, and that isn't a mentor. It's just a buddy to be that one-on-one contact with the chapter, keep the engagement, tell them all about why you're a member, how, if they have questions about the class. So this might be another way for folks to either FaceTime with each other or just talk on the phone with a chapter member to keep that camaraderie going.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That way they don't feel alone in the process. There's somebody that either there's somebody if they're partnered, yours is partnered with somebody that's in the chapter currently, so they're going through this knowing that they have a direct connection to the larger chapter. I've also seen models where their partner is in the training class with them, and so they're going through the training class together. That's a great way model to kind of keep those folks engaged. Thank you for sharing, Betsy.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, if y'all have no other questions, we'd like to thank you today again for attending. We know it's sometimes hard to attend the day after a big holiday weekend. So thank you for being here. And
happy birthday, Michelle!
Thank you.
As your phone goes off, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Michelle. Happy birthday to you.
Yay!
25 never looked so good.
I didn't mean to laugh so hard.
Those were the days.
Yes, they were. All right, y'all. Don't forget to fill out that training request for information if you haven't already. And if you need to update it based on the meeting today, let us know that too. And we'll be keeping you informed as we receive more information. And again, just thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for being adaptable. And thank you for your input and just being the people you are. So
Yeah, thank you guys.
have a good rest of your week.
And you want to stop that recording?